updates. Good morning, Tobago.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Well, viewers, we're switching up the conversation for this very good Friday morning, and we're getting into some relationship talk, right? And as I said, I'm being joined by somebody that you know when it comes to relationship, especially when it comes to men and so on, Mr. Michael Stewart, and he is a motivational speaker and life coach. Special good morning and welcome to you.
Thank you very much, Candice. Pleasure to be here.
Now, we have a special conversation this morning on how to find your spouse, right? And I guess I'm going to read this a little bit. There are so many inconsistencies. If you ask women if they believe there should be equality in the genders, they will say yes, of course. If you ask women, what if the man works for more money than the woman and they separated, should the man pay her as well for the separation? They would say without hesitating, yes, absolutely. If you ask the woman, if the woman works for more money than the man and they separate, should the woman pay him as well? Pause. But if you wish to live, do not hold your breath for the answer.
What do you think of that?
Well, I am going to ask you to expand on that. Quite a little bit of thinking.
You see, there are so many inconsistencies that we're operating in this space when we're talking about the relationship and the gender and so on. And when we talk about gender equality, many times we really mean equality for one side of the gender,
Yes.
and not necessarily equality across the board. So whenever there is, let's say you have a group of people and you have an overwhelming number of men, you hear it said, oh, it's not unfair that it is male dominated. Yes. But once you have this another group of people or the same group of people and it is dominated by women, women power, you see, women rising, it's not equal again. So it is an inconsistency that we are talking about. And unless we start addressing those inconsistencies, we're going to always have issues with the gender. It's either we want equality. I propose equity, which is different from equality. Because equality is, if you're a police and we are treating all equal and there is a fracas in a bar 3 o'clock in the morning, well, don't look at the gender. Just send the person who is on duty to go there. But would you want to go down there at 3 o'clock in the morning?
Of course not.
Of course not, but you want equality. You see? So,
well, see, and then that's why I'm not a police officer, because then, I mean, if you are a police officer, then you have to be prepared to do that kind of a job.
That's right. So it is equity. Equity says it is not a fair arrangement to have the woman go at 3 o'clock in the morning. Send a man. You understand? So, but we keep saying, no, we want equality, we want things. That's the inconsistency that I am always amazed at it. I always talk of this story where I had a group of people coming to Tobago. They landed at the airport and I was supposed to transport them. I was supposed to make 2 trips. So I went there and I said, listen, we can't hold everybody. I'll take anybody first who gets in and so on, because in my head, equality. Here's what the woman said. I've been standing here with my heels. You see this equality thing, Mr. Stewart? We'll deal with that tomorrow. Not today. And they wanted to be first. Now, normally I would have taken the women first and then go with the men. No, they said no. So the equality and the inconsistency showing up once again. You see? So those are some of the debates that we are having in the space when it comes to men and women and our relationships.
So do you think as a society we are ready to have this conversation? Because, I mean, for a long time, women have fought for their rights. And, you know, I mean, it did not start off well. And if you're honest, things were imbalanced.
Yes.
Right? Women were not allowed certain opportunities and so on. But, I mean, we've gotten to a point where I believe that society is at a point where, you know, we allow women to be in whatever jobs that they want to be and access the same, you know, salaries, etc. for these positions. So now that we're here, do you think we're ready now to, in a sense, give some power back to the men?
Well, you see, somebody said too far east is west. because now you are pushing so hard that we now would have 2 female presidents. We now have a woman who's the head of the police service. We have women in almost every sphere. You just interviewed Dr. Angus,
Yes.
who Dr. Angus has been the presiding officer as a female. So, and we currently have the presiding officer, also a female. So, in almost every strata of life, is Trinidad and Tobago. You have it that a woman has had it. But you see, some of the things that some women condemned then, they're now taking it up on themselves, fighting and violence, and so on. When you watch Facebook, where do you see most of those fights and violence really taking place in our schools and on social media and so on? Are squabbles. Yesterday I watched a funeral, and in the funeral was only women fighting each other, while the men stood back. So the very things that some condemned, they now take upon themselves. I was amazed when I was in a class and I heard the girls saying, hey, I can't wait for this class to go on. Let me go out and take a drink and get drunk. Now, those are things that were men that we were saying, men, you all need to taper down. But would the women not get the same results that the men got, which we abhor, by going too far east? Should there not be a balance that we're going to come back to? And so, yes, we celebrate the strides that women make, and we encourage them. It is good for our society. But we have to be careful that it is not going to be a takeover where we have the same thing. As one politician said, we don't have change, we have exchange as to who doing the issues that going on.
Then how do we as a society allow, women to excel and women to, be whoever they want to be, but still maintain a man's role, a man's character, and man's respect as well within the society?
Probably if we just stop the competition.
Stop the competition.
The competition is what is having it. Just recognize this is a man and this is a man's role, this is a woman, this is a woman's role. Because we don't like that, because just that alone is going to create its own issue. So now we're here for Mother's Day. I want to thank so-and-so for being mother and father. So you leave him out. You never hear a man on Father's Day say, we want to be able to thank a man for being father and mother. Because most men really not trying to compete. But there is this desire, strong desire to compete in order to be able to almost annihilate men, if possible, and it may not be consciously, but unconsciously. And so we have boys coming up, listening to that. So if we get rid of the competition and start looking at it from the standpoint of roles, and nothing is wrong in roles. When you go into a work, somebody is the CEO. You can't say, listen, we want equality across the board. Somebody has to have the role of the CEO. Somebody has to have the role of the financial advisor or the finance person. Somebody has to be the role of the cashier. Nobody is better than the next. The only thing and the only difference is roles.
Now, I wanted to also treat with the idea of the emasculated men. And that term has, that has come up as we push more for women's rights. And as you say, we're pushing it so much that it's perhaps tipping the scales in an unbalanced position, right? Because we want to maintain that balance between men and women, because men and women are equally important. At the end of the day, we're all human beings.
That's right.
Right? How, again, what's really happening with the men now? I want to understand that.
I think men are beginning to withdraw, and because the system really is against men. All a woman has to do is just make a report that a man has hit her, and the police is going to be at his door and arrest him without question. So, a lot of times now, men are telling themselves, does it really make sense getting into a relationship that you're serious with, a woman, because you have more to lose than to gain? You lose your house, you lose your credibility, you lose so much. And so because we have this contest and this adversarial atmosphere that is going on, with getting back to this relationship that we are able to appreciate each other and go along with each other, I think has to be the answer for the direction that we are going forward.
So but what would you say to the woman that say, well, the man don't care, he had a child with me and that sort of thing, and he just off and go. I mean, he doesn't have the same responsibilities in terms of taking care of the young ones.
Well, I see that as two people's responsibility. We keep putting it on the man that the men are fathering all these children and going off. Again, the inconsistency.
Yes.
So he has 4 different children for 4 different women. So he is a deadbeat dad. A woman has 4 children for 4 different men. She's a poor single mother. You see the inconsistencies. So it is not a man's issue or a woman's issue. It is our issue that the men have not been taking up their responsibility. But you've got to also accept the fact that many women are not making good selection in men, are not making good choices.
Or not taking responsibility
not taking
themselves.
responsibility for it.
Yeah.
But if you say that, you are cancelled for
Yes.
having to say that. You understand? So we've got to take the responsibility. We talk about objectifying women and men only putting focus on a woman's body and so on. But the question is, when you look at what's going on and you look at what people exhibit during Carnival and on social media, who's really objectifying the woman? You see? So those are some of the discussions that we need to start ventilating in the public and to be able to look at it. So it is not a one side must take responsibility. Both sides must take some form of responsibility.
Well, and on that point, then how do we get both men and women to take responsibility for their actions? Because, I mean, ultimately that affects the way how our society operates. That affects, whether one group feels disenfranchised over the other.
Right. So we got to sit down at the table and talk. To listen to what the other side is saying. What we have right now is everybody coming to say their piece, but they don't want necessarily to hear the other side. But if we start generating the kind of atmosphere, safe space, that a man could say, this is how I feel and this is how I relate to a woman, and a woman can afford to say without having to have a rebuff from the man, this is how I feel, this is how I feel in the relationship, and we listen. And then we make a commitment that we are going to now work on the things that the woman see that she has issues for, and we support the men in making those changes, and the women support the women in making those changes. So what we do is that we have conferences, and we only talk about our side in those conferences. So when the men get together, the men talk about what we need to do in order to be able to stand up in society and to be able to have our voices heard, and so on. We don't take into consideration what the women are going through. A lot of women have been abused. A lot of them are being heartbroken because of men who are just moving from relationship to relationship. We wouldn't be talking about that in our sessions. And when the women get together and talk about empowerment and where we're going and so on, not realizing that there are some things that they do to men and with men that the men have issues with. So that we do in our separate conferences. But here's what also happens. Whenever that planned conference is made, the conference for a woman is usually empowering and encouraging and uplifting. But many of the conferences that are made for men usually have a negative undertone. So you have women in leadership, women in breaking the glass ceiling, women in the executives. But for men, it's toxic masculinity, fixing men. So even the languaging, the conversations need to change.
And I want to speak on that for a moment. This idea of toxic masculinity, some of these things that they are filtering down from the States and other places where it's a messy situation up there, but we're adopting some of those messy ideologies.
Wholesale.
Right? How damaging is the idea or the proliferation of toxic masculinity within our thinking, within our philosophy and all of that?
Well, what it is going to do, if you repeat something often enough, people tend to believe it. So we have boys who coming up who really believe in it. that we are toxic. And because they believe it, and if you feel that you are suffering from an ailment that you have no recourse, no healing for, you really don't care after a while. So I know there's a gentleman, a young boy, who he was told that he is going to die by a certain age because of the ailment he had. So he became very disruptive in school and so on. And when you sat down with him, he recognized, well, I can't do anything about it anyway because they told me I'm going to die by a certain age. So he doesn't care. He's doing everything and so on. And he met the age, passed the age, and then realized, but it was false. So his behavior changed after that age. So if you say that men are toxic, these boys are going to listen to it. And he said, well, why should I even work on this?
But then what is toxic masculinity? Because it's easy to throw those words. It's easy to say a man is being toxic when he's just being a man and he's just doing things with other men. Like, how do we define when their behavior becomes toxic?
Well, and the phrase of putting toxic and masculinity together is an oxymoron.
Well, yes.
Because masculinity talks about bravery, talks about protection, talk about security and so on. That's what masculinity is about, that in its general, pure sense.
And about strong and strength and all of that.
That's right. Yes. And when you tell a man his strength, he should deny. His bravery, he should deny. So he's not being a man when he's not being real to himself and so on. So we ask them to cry on demand as though it is Netflix. You know, it doesn't happen so. Because a man likes the idea of being brave. If something comes into my house, let's say a snake comes into my house, I'm just as scared of the snake as my wife. But I think for my family's sake, I need to appear brave. And you can't tell me that I'm being toxic because of that, because of when I'm going through something, I'm not crying and so on. Crying is nice, but you can't demand me to cry. And so some men start crying in order to prove that they're in touch with their self. And then they are turned around and said, oh, you're a pumpy man. You understand? So it is helping us to that. So that toxic masculinity, toxic goes opposite to what we're talking about. They can't be the same sentence. So, and when you keep focusing on what we are doing wrong, you'll get more of it. Whatever it is you talk more about, if you tell a child you are so under performing, you are so dunce and so on, you are not encouraging that child. This is why we support the angle that the women are going. Empowerment and all of that, because that's the angle that it should go, and that is why they are doing so well.
Now, in this society that we're so focused on, elevating women and putting women up on these pedestals almost, and making sure we have women in every sector of the society, like there is actually a serious effort to make that happen, that goes beyond just, choosing the best person for the job. But how do we ensure that men be empowered within all of that?
By the languaging, helping to reaffirm men and helping men to understand that we have value, that we have strength within us, and we have ambition, we have potential. And I just remembered while you was talking there, I attended a conference, and inside of that was, again, this whole toxic masculinity, and I listened to a man to show how we have corrupted our own minds by what way we keep hearing that and those programs are actually led by women, talking about these things. When you go there, the administrators and moderators, etc. And listen to what this man said. I believe that anything a man can do, a woman can do better. Every time. Everything a man can do, a woman can do better. And this is coming from a man. It showed how so corrupted in his mind he is as a man now, that in the presence of these women, because we were outnumbered in this session, he's even afraid to affirm his manhood by saying they could do better. There is no way that sentence could ever make sense, that somebody say everything. So when you ask, if a man could lift so many pounds, you are saying a woman can also lift so many pounds? Okay, yes. And there are some women who can. So then, therefore, you're actually saying nothing a man does would he ever get equal in the competency as a woman or better, because the woman can always do it, not only do it, I am okay up to the point of where he said she can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But everything he can do, she can do it better. And we have boys growing up with that mentality. That's a sad, sad situation.
Yes,
because how can you become a prime minister? How can you
how can you
become a
live
leader?
up to your true
True
potential?
potential when there's none.
Yeah.
You understand? So, so that's, I just wanted to put that in as you were talking there, that we need to start looking at some of those things in order to move us forward.
All right. Well, we'll have to leave that conversation out there. A very interested conversation on a Friday afternoon. Coincidentally, just before we go into next week, where we're going to be celebrating International Women's Day, but there's some things that we need to consider because, again, a lot of these languaging really does tear us apart. And a lot of times we use words without understanding the true meaning of these words.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a hurricane.
But March 8th, which happens to be my anniversary and my wife's birthday and International Women's Day. November 19th is International Men's Day. But International Women's Day is recognized by United Nations.
Yes, and International Men's Day is not.
It's not.
Wow.
It's recorded on the UN as World Day of the Toilet.
I cannot comment on that. All right, Mr. Michael Stewart, thank you so much for just engaging us in a bit of a different conversation for a Friday morning. I'm saying Friday afternoon. Anyways, it's been a long week, but it's all good.
Yes.
Thank you for being on with us.
Appreciate being here.
Viewers, yes, thank you for continuing to support us, and to viewers religiously every day, and yeah, stay locked on to Tobago updates because we have so much in store for you guys. So have a wonderful, safe, and productive weekend, and we'll see you again on Monday.
It's a brand new morning, rise up to a brand new dawn, and as the passion starts.